No, you know what? I'm not actually going to do 50 things. I'm going to do 50 things next week for two reasons. First, because 50 is a lot of things. But second, and more importantly, the reason I'm not going to do 50 things yet is because I need to talk to you about one thing. When you talked about Fear Itself and you brought up Scott McCloud, I'm a fan of that book too. I got my copy right here. Understanding Comics. You'll notice my cover's different than yours. That's probably because I've had mine a lot longer than yours and it's an earlier edition. You were upset that in one panel Iron Man and Cap are talking and Iron Man's mask is closed, and in the very next panel Iron Man's mask is open. That there was nothing to indicate that he had opened his mask between the panels. I think what really is going on is pretty simple. You have a very clear bias against Marvel Comics. As a matter of fact, what I'd like to do is refer back to Understanding Comics. Let's refer to the page that you brought up. You'll notice that panel is exactly the same as the one that's in your video. It actually says the space between the panels. That's what they call the gutter. That was what you mentioned. But the very next panel says, and despite its unceremonious title, the gutter plays host to the magic and mystery that are the heart of comics. So in that gutter, human imagination takes two separate images and transforms them into a single idea. Nothing is seen between the two panels, but experience tells you something must be there. And that's what we're talking about. The gutter is actually where that magic takes place. Let me nerd out here for just a minute. We all know he probably has controls that are harnessed within the suit that you'll never see, so the mask just pops up. Definitely I'm not trying to make that my sole argument because I think that's really beside the point. That magic that Scott McCloud is talking about in his book isn't really magic. What he's talking about is motion. What he's talking about is action. Those things that take place. You're talking about a comic book where everything is a static image. So if you're going to have a combat, a conversation, a piece of action, a mask moving up or down, those things have to happen within the gutter. Does there sometimes need to be something to indicate? Yes, you're absolutely right. Is that a very, very nitpicky single instance that you're seeing? Absolutely, I could give you that if you really wanted to argue it. But, and this is the big thing, John, it has nothing to do with Marvel and DC. You've got a very old school mentality when it comes to what DC and Marvel are. For you, and for a lot of readers to be fair, DC and Marvel are these two companies that are so completely different and everything is completely separated. And that's not actually the case. There is no separation. It's such a niche market that really everyone is working for everyone in most cases. I want to bring up there are two editors for Fear Itself. Tom Brevoort, who's the main editor over the group of Marvel books that puts that out, and the editor of that individual comics, Axel Alonso. Axel's worked for Marvel Comics for quite a while now, but from 1994 until the year 2000, he was actually an editor and writer at DC Comics. I like Marvel and DC, and if you can get past which companies make which one and which editors are doing what to what, the truth is that there's a lot of really good stories on both camps, and honestly that there's a lot of really bad stories on both camps. I think you're about to see in the next few months, particularly in September when DC Comics relaunches its entire line, almost, that there's going to be a lot of stuff that you're really not going to like from DC Comics, and maybe a few things that'll be pretty good. So John, next week I'm going to do 50 things. It's a lot of things. I've never listed 50 things, particularly 50 things about me. So until then, I'm going to give you some comics to read. I know you've got some catching up to do. This week will be probably a light week. Maybe you can lump them together and kind of jump back in. I'll see you next week.